Hi, I'm Lynne with Softsquares. Today is Monday, which means it's Maker's Monday, and we are going to work on binding. I did this quilt a couple weeks ago. It's my Paw Patrol quilt for grandson, and it's back from the quilter. It has been quilted with these cute little paws in primary colors. It matches this really, really well. So excited. So now I'm going to put the binding on, which is going to be this stripe. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of how I do this. So there are some other videos that I have done on binding that are also a good resource, but this will be just another one added to the list of binding videos, because sometimes you have to see it more than once or in different ways. So I'm going to show you what we're doing today. Okay, we have these strips. I've already cut them out at 2.5 inches wide, but to figure out how many strips I need, I'm going to do some math. First thing I'm going to do is measure the directions, so the length and the width, and see how big it is. And the best thing is to measure it through the middle instead of on the end. But at this point, with it being quilted already, it probably would be the same. It's just a good practice, a good habit. So top to bottom, I have 51 inches. Side to side, I have 42, 51 by 42. My dimensions for my quilt are 42 wide by 51 long. So I'm going to take my calculator and add 51 2 times, because there's a top and a bottom and a right and a left. So there's 2 sides for each one of these. And I'm going to take 42 and put that in here twice. My total is 186. Take that number and divide it by 40. That right there is how many strips you're going to need to go around the quilt, and I always round it up. So 5. So the reason for that math is there's roughly 42 inches in a width of fabric. And sometimes it varies. So 42 is kind of average. Some of them are 44, some of them are 40. Then you also have the selvage to keep in mind. So I'm just conservative and dividing it by 40, because we're also going to do mitered ends. So we're going to be cutting on an angle and cutting into that a little bit. And to do that, and the reason we're doing that is to distribute the seam so it's not very bulky when we're attaching it to the quilt, and you'll see that as I go. So that is my secret recipe for binding. Now we're going to take these over to the machine. I have all my strips already cut, and fold it in half. Well, actually, I'm going to do the mitered seam. I'm going to show you that, but then I'm going to fold it in half and come back and stitch it down on the back side of the quilt, and I'll show you the process for doing that. The reason I do the back side is because I like the pretty clean finished look of it coming around on the front, where I can see where the needle's going in case things are a little wobbly. That's the better side, and I want it to look better there. So let's go to the other camera. Sew some angular seams. So to do the seam, this is just my thing, but you can see on one edge of the fabric I have a wider selvage than the other. And because it is a stripe and it repeats itself, I want to start with the same selvage. I'm going to use this wider one always on the right side. So that way, if it does repeat, it will still be in order instead of all of a sudden changing directions. So that means I need to match these 2 ends, so 1 of each. And I like to take my 1/4 inch foot off for this, because I have the little bar and it doesn't need to be there. So you can cut those selvages off, or you can just crisscross with the selvage up to the overhang, but not below. And then when you do your seam across corner to corner, when you cut this bit off, you'll be cutting this with it. Or you can do an extra step and take the selvage off at the same time. Okay. So when you trim it, you get this. And I'm going to continue with all the others. I'm going to take one of my ends. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to fold my fabric in half. Now I do just fine folding it in half and attaching it to my quilt. Some people like to go through and press everything in half. You certainly can do that. I don't. But we're going to start on the back side of the quilt, and you don't want to start on the top or in any obvious place. Now, one thing I am seeing is this is left over from when the quilters had to add some fabric to this to make it long enough, and evidently some of it ended up in it. You might not see it. Kind of weird. Anyway, okay, so you want to come down a little bit. It doesn't matter. I like to start on the side, in the middle of the side somewhere, and give myself 6 to 10 inches. I'm going to leave my regular foot on, and sew this on with the width of the foot hitting on the edge of this. And this is a 2.5 inch strip. Now you're going to want to match your thread. I wasn't thinking, I just started sewing with the white that was in my machine. I am going to switch my thread out because when I go to finish it and I pull this over to the top like this, it should cover that thread. But if for some reason it doesn't and you can see it, it's noticeable because it's bright white. I'm going to put red in, and then I don't have to worry about it when I need to do my top stitching either. So now this is what it looks like. See, it blends in, almost not even noticeable that it's there. That's the point. I'm going to finish going around it, and then when it's time to join, or actually when I get to the corners I'll slow down, and when I join it I'll let you know too. Okay, so I'm sewing out the width of the foot is where my foot is. So when I come down to my corner, I want to stop before I get to the seam. I want to stop the same width in the corner. And then when I pivot, it's pretty. And then my favorite trick is when you get there where you would normally be done, you can knot it off. But I like to sew it off on an angle. This helps my corners to be really sharp and bright, And I still have the white thread on the top so you can see that a little easier. And then we turn it. You're going to take your fabric and go up and then down. And ironically, that seam right there is going to help your fabric go where it needs to go. So here's the back side. You're looking for the red threads. So here's that point. It's hard to see right now, but it will look pretty. Same thing. Went to the corner, went off, and this is where I will start. Again, fabric goes up, so fold it at 90 degree, bring it down. Okay, coming up on my last corner, so I've got that angle going up like that. Make my 90 degree bend, go up, come down. Make sure all your edges are flush. And then I'm only going to go down to there because look, we're at the end where we're going to start putting these two together. So you need some slack, and this is a 2.5 inch strip of fabric, so I need a 2.5 inch overlap. And to make it nice and clean, I'm gonna trim that. And so we have the bottom one right here, we have the top one folded and on top here. Now you want to have them taut, so you don't want any looseness. In fact, as I was sewing it on, I was doing the same thing. Now where these overlap, I'm gonna go 2.5 inches and cut it. Then we're gonna do our joint like we did with all the others. So here to here. Oh, look how fun it is. It lined up really good. So right through that yellow. Now you're gonna have to kind of play with this because it's tight. But cross them over again. So top left to bottom right on an angle. Make sure nothing is in the way because it is limited here. And you might find it easier to pin it to keep it from moving on you. just trim that off. You want to, before you do that, do this part where you stretch it out and make sure it really is right, because if it's too long you can still fix it. If it's too short you need to pick it, and you don't want to have it cut too short. Okay, so now I'm going to pick up where I left off, making sure I back stitch when I stopped and when I start here. Okay, we are done. Now it's time to flip it over and sew on this side, and I'm going to change that to red thread on top. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over. I like to start in the corner because I'm able to disguise and bury my start and stop points. So we're going to have a lot of little threads. Just good to trim them. So we're going to take this fabric. We want to make sure it's coming over nice and tight. And I'm going to start right here in the corner, and then when I end it I will be finishing it right there, and it will be pretty. So by starting it here, it's actually going to be in the seam when I fold it over when I come back. The start stitch anyway. Now I'm coming up on the white that was there when I first started before I changed the bobbin, and you can see why it's good to change it, because as I come over here I want to pull this over, and actually so far we're doing well. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes you end up just a little short for whatever reason, your margins are off, and you might see that thread, so matching it is good. Coming up on the corner, so I want to play with this a little bit, get rid of some of the threads. And what's going to happen is we're going to sew down here. We're going to have this folded over before we get there though. Sew down here on the edge, do a little back stitch on each direction, and then go straight down here. And I do a back stitch by going to the point where I want to pivot, but then I back stitch 2 stitches and then come forward 2, and then I'm back in that same spot, and then when I turn I do the same thing. So what that does is it helps to hold down all this bulk that's here. Hopefully this makes sense as you see it. Okay, so now I'm in the middle. I'm going to go forward 2 steps, go back. That was 3. I got a little carried away. Then keep it in reverse. Now go forward. This corner's not going to be as pretty as I wanted it to be. I ended up with a seam in the corner, which is nice if you can avoid it. I don't know how I lucked out with that. Let's get away from it and see. So there's our corner. So I came down here and I went forward 2 stitches. You can barely see it on the black. Then I went back to here, and then I backed up and went this way, and then I went straight. So by doing those extra little tacks, I feel that it is making it a little more secure. And it's not that big of a deal. I would rather be secure. Coming up on the corner again. Folding it over so I have a nice point. Hold it in place. Okay, I'm coming up on my final corner. So I fold it over. Treat it like all the others. Forward 2, back to center, go back 2, go forward. And even though I've already been down this side, go down it again a little bit. And then knot it off. Okay, I am done with this quilt. I have gone around the binding. I have put the label on. I used a white label, so I have white on the top, and then I matched the back so it's not as noticeable going through there. And now it's ready to go to my grandson. And I already made a pillowcase for a full-size pillow, as well as a small throw pillow with the blocks that were left over and a pillow form that fits in it. So I will try to include some footage just so you can see what I had made, but this is all done. Mr. Paw Patrol can play. That's it for today. Thank you for being here. Remember, Makers Mondays every Monday at 3 p.m. Mountain. Have a great day. There. Now I'm going to make a pillow form for it because this is a strange size. Got lots of little things going on over here, including that. All right. Let me know what you think about this. Have a great day.